If only it were so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. Greg Lukianoff, The Coddling of the American Mind. You're listening to AMI Audiobook Review on AMI Audio. I'm your host, Jacob Szymanski. That quote is from a nonfiction title that I fully intend on reading with an open mind, despite a title and a face value premise that reeks of self-righteousness. Someone who can shed light on that title is Ramya Amuthan.
Ramya needs no introduction. She is a star on AMI, the voice of so many promos, and the co-host of Kelly and Ramya. Ramya Amuthan is here with us finally. Not only is she an avid audiobook listener, but this show, Audiobook Review, used to be her baby. Ramya joins us today for a rapid fire review. Welcome.
Hey, welcome back.
Hi. You guys are always killing me with these intros. Thank you for starting with Star. Now I won't be able to fit into my Zoom screen.
Yo, how's your reading been though? Like, you've been away from the show for a little bit. Like, full disclosure, it's just nothing insidious. It's just I didn't usurp your position. I didn't play politics here at AMI. I promise.
Yeah, and that's
just
the
scheduling
statement we're sticking
conflicts.
to.
Fine. I've been pushing to get you back on the show for a while.
Yeah, you guys are so sweet. And my reading has been decent. I will say I have read less books. I've been demanded to read less books, obviously, since I haven't been on the show for weekly episodes. But I've still been reading, keeping up.
Demanded. You make it sound like it's homework.
Yeah,
I mean, you do read a
forced us
lot
to
on your
read,
own,
Jacob.
do you? I mean, to read specific titles, I suppose.
Sure, yeah, exactly. That's what I meant, obviously.
We do our best to like cater these books to things that we would both read like on our own time, but that
most of the time,
but that would work for other people too. Like, we try to like curate the show.
Well, it's been really fun because now I just read whatever I want, and like it's been a long while ago since we talked about Spotify, and I remember my first very controversial remarks on whether Spotify is going to be good enough or not for the audiobook world, and I will say I have maxed out my 15 hours every month for the last few months.
Yeah, it's
right?
clutch. No,
Yeah, it is.
seriously. And they have a huge catalog, and all the big new titles are making it on there. I think it's going to catch on. Do you remember how much it costs to get an extra 10 hours?
I don't remember, but it was something ridiculous. Well, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like
it was
$15 maybe?
somewhere between like 10 and 15, something like that.
It was like a whole Audible credit kind of situation. But I do have a story of trying to read an entire book with the 15 hours, not exactly checking how long the audiobook title is, and then screwing up and having 1 hour left of the audiobook
They got you
saved
good.
30 days. Oh, man. Because that was hard.
You must have anticipated that last hour of that book for like 30 days. That's ridiculous. A whole month.
Jaw-dropping moment. Because it slyly, Spotify will let you go to the end of the chapter or the end of that section kind of thing. So I was like, oh my gosh. And then highly anticipating moment, by the way, like cliffhanger of the entire book, of the climax. And then I realized it's not starting back up. What is going on? I opened my phone up. It turns out that you've maxed out your hours.
I was wondering what the
days.
message would be. Like, if it popped up like insert credit card number here to continue. Oh, I would be so mad.
Close enough. It's like you have but it'll tell you like you have 22 days till your hours refresh. And I was like, get out.
The way I'm getting my audiobooks nowadays is 3 locations, mostly Sela, a little bit of Audible because I still have a subscription. I feel like it's worth it. And then Spotify. And through that, I pretty much get access to everything I want.
It's wild to think, like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's wild to think that now Audible's kind of the bottom of the list. Like, it sounds pretty privileged to say, but I have, 3 credits, and those are practically rolling over on Audible, and I don't know what to use them on because Spotify and Sela are my top 2. But I can't get rid of Audible.
Surely you read more than 50 hours a month, though.
15?
Yeah.
Yes,
surely,
yeah. But,
right? Like Spotify couldn't possibly be in your top.
No.
At this point, Audible is still the king, no?
No, I'd say Sela. Because
Sela,
Sela
oh,
you could
for
just
us,
bank
yeah,
in everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
Let's get into what you've been reading though, because we want to have you here for rapid fire review. I'm gonna call this a let's catch up with Ramya because she's been missing in action rapid fire review. That's the theme.
Also, it's been so long since Remy done rapid fire review, so she's got to brush up on her skills and she's nervous.
I usually feel kind of bad that this is like high key stressful for the people doing RFR,
Yeah.
but since it's you, I don't feel bad at all. Let's do it. Reminding you all of the rules, Ramya gave us 5 of her most recent notable reads. She has 15 seconds per book to give us a synopsis slash review. I'm going to be reading the titles and the author. After I finish reading the author, you're going to hear a ticking sound effect. Rams, that means you can get started on you. You have your 15 seconds to tell us about the book. We're going to go through all 5. Once we go through all 5, you can pick one of them to further elaborate on. Let's get going. All right, the first book is Big Dating Energy by Jeff Guenther and Kate Tapp.
Jeff Guenther is one of my favorite social media therapists. He's called Therapy Jeff, and he brings his wit, his humor, his absolute joy of life, and his honesty to the book, and it's really, really fun. It doesn't have to be about you trying to date. Ooh.
Very quickly, I'm still unclear. Is this like a dating book or a psychology book?
It's like the psychology of dating slash trying to
Uh,
get people okay with what it's like to date in 2024. So it's just a realistic understanding of what dating is. But it's really about like your confidence in going out in the world and finding love.
the funny
Super
thing
cute.
is, I find that the culture of dating seems to change like every decade, and
Exactly.
it feels like the type of book that would not age well. What do you think?
That's a fair point, but he, I think, is very aware of that as well, or I should say the authors, because it is pretty co-authored, and they kind of
Oh.
paste the book that way. They talk to you more anecdotally than, here is what you should be aware of, and it's just like a very cute, humorous, lovely, just I don't know, getting people to think about different things and boost your own confidence, I guess. It's very sweet.
Next book is Tuesdays with Morrie, an old man, a young man, and life's greatest lesson by Mitch Albom.
This is a classic, of course. Many people have watched the movie. I'd say check out the book. It's quite thought provoking. A lot of reflection. Moves very well. You don't feel like you're getting into too many deep dives in philosophy, but just enough to get you thinking about death and other things.
I don't want to think about that. That's
You
what gives me
do.
existential
You do
crises.
through Tuesdays with Morrie.
I guess it forces you to.
It does, but in a very kind of calm, soothing, hearing it from an old man who's lived life, who has a lot to share through stories and perspective.
What's his background? Like, he's not just an old man. What kind of life did he
He's
live?
he's not just an old man. The part of the story is really about the reconciliation of this professor and the student. Hey, you're cheating with rapid fire, by the way. Like, you're making me give you snippets of each book, but I don't mind. Okay, so the professor and the student, their reconciliation is part of the story. The other big part of the story is this professor is dying of ALS. He's dying with Lou Gehrig's disease, and through that journey, whatever he has left, a couple months, a couple weeks, he has no idea. He's just letting us know, like, this is how it is to be dying. And these are the most important things that he's focusing on, that he's learned, that he wants you to take away. But he's
Wow.
talking directly to the student that he's reunited with after decades of teaching him, or of having stopped teaching him.
Well, when you die, you go to a cemetery, and this next book is perfectly related. The next book is Pet Sematary by Stephen King.
I think this is my 4th book of Stephen King that I've picked up ever, and I go through long spurts of not reading Stephen King and then get into something and go, oh my goodness, Stephen, stop it, jaw-dropping. And this is the 15 of the 16 hours that I read on Spotify and had to wait like 40 days to to get my last hour in. So good.
You're a real Stephen King fanatic, eh?
I love him, but I haven't read enough of him.
I heard this is one of his best. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And his own thoughts is that this is the book that he went too far with. He says that he doesn't say this about any of his other books. This is the book that he, after writing it, he thought, absolutely not. This is way too chilling. I'm going to put it in my bottom drawer, lock it up, and never look at it again. But because of a crisis he had with rights and trying to get out of a contract with a publisher, they said, we need one more book from you, non-negotiable.
Wow.
And to exit out of that contract, he said, fine, here's the only thing I have right now, and tossed Pet Sematary at them. And obviously it became an incredible hit.
And that just happened to be the one that he threw at them, like absentmindedly.
He had
like,
nothing
fine,
else going.
Fine.
Fine, if you must have my work, because he wanted to get out of this contract. He gave them Pet Sematary.
So
it is such an incredible book.
So lesson for authors is, if you want motivation in an absolute masterpiece, all you need is contractual obligations to push you along.
Yeah. Some backup material that you never thought you'd put out there.
Next, nobody wants to see my backup material. Next, Thunderdog, the true story of a blind man, a guide dog, and the trial of trust at Ground Zero by Michael Hingson with Susan Flory.
This is actually quite an interesting read. Of course, there's the blind hero story, the guide dog is the hero story, but really between all of that is just incredible insight on living with blindness when it comes to technology, when it comes to resilience. Oh, there's so much more I wanted to say about that. I didn't economize my words.
Okay, we'll get back to it. We've been cheating so far. I've been asking questions after each one of these. Let's just move on, okay? We'll get back to it. The next one is The Coddling of the American Mind, How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt.
So obviously it's a controversial title. It's very controversial throughout the books. The authors did an incredible job, though it opened up my mind for sure. It was a struggle and a challenge to read, but Joe Rogan recommended it, so I really wanted to check it out, and that's where it all kind of started.
So you took a recommendation from Joe Rogan?
Yeah, I know. I told you it started off pretty controversial, I think. But I was going through in really Instagram or TikTok. I don't remember when this was, but anyway, and Joe Rogan just like offhandedly mentioned this book, and I thought, what a title. Then I went into a deep dive, and I've told you guys about how I just pick up recommendations from random people on TikTok, right? Yeah. I'm so highly influenced.
Are you highly influenced, or are you open-minded? Or is it one of those situations where it's like you can be so open-minded that your brain falls out?
That mostly.
Okay, I feel like I'm ripping on you a little too much here. Like, it's actually super fair that you're reading controversial books. Like, it doesn't mean you believe everything that's in them.
Something like that. Oh, absolutely not. And it was quite a challenging read. No, it was quite a challenging read, this one, to be honest. There were chapters where I was contemplating just putting the book down, but I promised myself I would get through it because I really wanted to know the points that they were making.
Okay, so do you want to elaborate on this one? Because that's what it sounds like.
Let's do it. Yeah, only because you started off with this one anyways at the start of the show.
Yeah, I kind of
What I'm going to do is, though, yeah, you insisted. What I'm going to do is, they'll read you the back cover, the synopsis of the book, because I'm not going to do a good job at freehanding that, and then we can talk about it. So, The Coddling of the American Mind, How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure, examines how certain cultural trends and ideas in American society, especially on college campuses, are negatively impacting young people. The book argues that overprotection, the avoidance of discomfort, and the promotion of a, quote, safetyism mentality are contributing to rising levels of anxiety, depression, and an inability to engage with opposing viewpoints. The authors explore the consequences of shielding young minds from challenges, suggesting that it ultimately weakens resilience, critical thinking, and emotional growth. They propose solutions to foster a more robust intellectual environment for students and society at large. All of this is true. In terms of what they explore, what they examine, and how they balance out viewpoints from left and right wing, if we're talking politically, but really, conservative and liberal viewpoints, conservative and liberal examples, and college campuses were the predominant examination in this book. The authors, it was quite interesting because it was one journalist and one, well, two journalists really, but one person really wanted to focus on cognitive behavioral therapy, which was also a kind of intrigue point for me to check out this book, because I wanted to know exactly how they wanted to bring mental health back into the conversation, right? Not just say, oh my gosh, the way we're raising our kids is affecting their mental health. How can we move forward? They actually wanted to talk about CBT being not necessarily a solution, but an approach to dealing with managing emotions, managing the way that we're setting up people in North America, in colleges and education.
I think we can all understand the relation between safetyism, being afraid of arguing dissenting viewpoints, and
Mm-hmm.
rising anxiety. Like, I can totally get that. What I'm curious about, though, is what solutions are they offering that aren't draconian?
So, okay. Well, first of all, before talking about the solutions, I think that one of the things that we need to put out there is they talk about woke mentality, right? Or this
Mm-hmm.
understanding, to break it down further, to be more meta about it, this concept of we don't want to hear you if you are disagreeing with what we're saying. That's the part of safetyism that they really wanted to bring to light in this book. And I thought that they did a fair job at that.
Yeah.
There were many, many, many recent examples, but really examples in the last 2 decades of this growing concept of, especially at college campuses, if there was a guest speaker at a course, trying to teach a course or being involved in a course where you were supposed to look at an idea that was completely opposite to your beliefs, then that would get shut down. And basically, what was being encouraged was, if they agree with us, then bring them on and we will support them. And if not, we have to shut it down. We want to cancel anybody who is disagreeing with us. And a lot of that kind of, why that's wrong or why that isn't necessarily moving education forward. What are the issues around not hearing from people who oppose your ideas at all, and how it hurts on every level? It hurts educators, it hurts students, it hurts, people's own ability to stand up for what they believe in, right? Because we hear a lot about this in politics as well, right? Where we're not getting real numbers. We're not getting real numbers of what people believe. Instead, we hear later that, oh, we're shocked because so many people said X, Y, and Z in public, but in private, they actually intended this or believe in that. So there's this kind of disconnect of like
There's a
what people are
fear.
willing to. Yes, there's a fear of expressing yourself and a fear of what might happen to you, your well-being, your livelihood, if you express yourself and your true beliefs.
Off the top of the show, I said that the title sounded self-righteous and pretentious.
Mm,
Um, but what's really self-righteous is the mentality that everything you disagree with is not worth listening. And
100%.
even further than that, is should be destroyed and not given a platform. And if you can't defend your opinions, and you can't defend your stances in good, reasonable debate or conversation, then I don't think you have a good leg to stand on, honestly.
Well, debate alone is a skill, right? Like, it's a skill to be able to put your position out there and then listen to somebody else's position, whether or not there's overlap in your beliefs. And yeah, the further down the line, we can say there's always overlap. Like, we're all human beings. We're trying to empathize. We're trying to be compassionate with one another. That's fair, because we're not always, it doesn't necessarily serve us to be tribal and to segregate and to say, you know, us and them, right? Because that's what we're seeing right now a lot in North America, these extremisms
The
of
bubbles, right?
position. Yes. But at the same time, that skill of debate, that skill of listening, I really do think we're losing it. We're losing it, and it's so obvious. Politics is, you know, clearly there's a lot of issues with people just being able to hear and understand and recognize somebody else's viewpoint. It's tough, I think.
It almost seems like listening is the real issue, not debating
Yes.
and putting your ideas out there. It's being receptive to other ideas. Does we mentioned solutions? We don't have that much time left, but I do want to hear from you
Hmm.
about this. Solutions. What are they offering?
Well, one of the things that one of the things that they mention in this book is, as you say, listening, but what that really means, right? So, you know, opening up spaces, as you said, safe spaces is not really the terminology they use because they're talking about safety as in being an issue. But the way that I hear it is just to make people more open to listening to people's other opinions. But the underlying one of the underlying issues around that was violence. Like so many, you know, protests are now becoming violent, and violence is something that people are actually scared of. But the concept of violence is changing. Like for example, you know, is it
Mhm.
really uh, is upsetting someone because your opinion is different from them violent? Like is it fair to say that, you know, it's not okay that people's feelings are hurt? Is that really a sign of danger versus, you know, actual violence, like people are throwing things at a protest? So there's one concept, which is they explore like what is violence, what does it mean to be safe, or you know, what should we take away from this, or what should we leave on the table? The other part of it is just becoming more resilient, and resilience is being able to take feedback, being able to take things that are thrown at you, aka difference of opinion, and being able to push through. That part of it was still kind of controversial for me, because they don't necessarily mention nuances like disability and other things like that.
Mm.
So there's a bit of a black or white to parts of this book. I'm not going to say all of the book, but you have to be conscious when you're reading this, because as you mentioned off the top, you can be easily influenced by anything and everything you read, right? So it this is a very difficult book. It challenges a lot,
Mm.
and you don't necessarily want to leave it thinking like everything in this book is gospel either.
That book is The Coddling of the American Mind: How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. Rams, that's pretty much all the time we have left, but that was a really good conversation. I'm looking forward to picking this one up, and I'll do my best to be open
Been saying
minded.
that. You've been saying that. It's been months. I don't know. Are you scared? You
I,
might be scared.
I'm a little scared. No, that's not true. It's just I hate that title so much. But yeah, seriously,
I
thank
know.
you so
I
much. We're
know.
looking forward to having you on again.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Niz.
That was Ramya Amuthan. She's a host on Kelly and Ramya, but she'll be on Audiobook Review fairly regularly from now on. That's all the time we have for this AMI Audiobook Review segment. We'll be back here again, same time tomorrow for AMI Today at 11 a.m. Eastern on AMI Audio and YouTube. I'm your host, Jacob Shamansky. Thanks for listening.